the data infrastructure side, where I'm talking file systems and parallel file systems and block storage. The storage infrastructure world is very simply, it's all about maps.
So that's the ugly part of data when, if not managed correctly, diligently, you sort of asset and become liability.
What are people inferring from this? What is AI inferencing from that? Their third platform when big data was the buzzword of the day. We've still got big data. I would argue we've got massive data or a tsunami of data.
There is no code in the world that can play an AI if anything goes wrong.
Today there is so much information coming in from so many mediums. And when information is repeated, there's a lot of convergent pieces of technology. It's almost a wall of little bricks all coming together. They need to work together.
But that's what the world is still open, and that's where the loopholes are.
An 11-second video that's uploaded to Instagram is the same as boiling 10 gallons of water.
There's so many teams managing different processes and they're not talking to each other.
When you develop a vision statement for the company, in some cases people do it because it's the thing to be done, but a vision should inspire people to ultimately get up every morning of this is why I'm here, this is why I'm doing that. All too often people overly wordsmith things, it becomes very generic. But if you can have a vision that truly inspires, that's great. Perfect. People can focus or use that as a guideline. But a vision without a strategy is just a dream.
He's managed the data plumbing and storage infrastructure for the Fortune 100 at tech giants like Hitachi, Western Digital, and EMC. Known in the boardroom as a rare species, he's an executive advisor who seamlessly translates deep engineering complexity into massive corporate revenue. Currently focused on transforming legacy storage into high-velocity AI machinery. Please welcome the architect of the 5 A's framework for budget mastery, Gary Lyng. What will you consider as a garbage, and what is the most important data?
The first step would be to get...
Gary, what do you think about advanced AI analytics while staying responsible with ethics and compliance?
There's an element of controls, let's call them checks and balances. And it's a bit of a balancing act. We hear obviously the government about trying to put certain guardrails, different states put more guardrails around AI and ethical AI and usage. And it is a balancing act. I don't think anyone's figured it out yet. It's still very, very new. I think, again, as people start to use technology for good, and then we find that people use technology for bad. Social media starting off back, when Facebook started was a wonderful thing. Sharing knowledge, sharing ideas. And then we get bad actors. Bad actors in terms of, going after young kids or going after or putting false information out there. AI certainly enables that to become faster and easier to do. And I remember I heard something on the radio just a few months back. I think it was Katy Perry's mom said, "I didn't know you were at this gala event." And she said, "Well, I wasn't." Well, it was an AI capability. And you're going, well, is that unethical? Yeah. And so people need to trust the input, the data itself. They need to then have very high confidence the output of the data, the image, the video, the documents, and the analysis is there. So we can do analysis till the cows come home. However, if you don't have trust in that data, and I think we talked earlier on about, well, what about, something like compound interest? How if data is learning from synthetic data, is that now bad data or ugly data, or is it good?
Yeah, so it controls the generation of data.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, humans started with something original, and then AIs keep learning and adding piles on top of that with its own understanding and logics and changing the whole perspective. It's a communication gap, generational gap.
It's almost like human factor of, people gossiping.
Exactly.
It's like gossiping AI. Maybe that's a term we can make up, but AI gossip,
Yeah,
where people add on to the previous piece of gossip. Someone hurt their finger. Someone tells someone else, oh, did you hear about Joe? He broke his hand and he's done. And by the time it goes through
Yep.
many different people over many centuries or many inputs, poor Joe's passed away and he only kept his finger. It's a little bit laughable, but unfortunately it happens time and time again through history. The irony is about the data growth. And people say it was doubling every, 100 years back in the 1900s. Now people are saying it's doubling every 8 hours. So again, where is this data coming from? Where is it going? Where is it landing? What are people inferring from this? What is AI inferencing from that? It's a brave new world. But as you see scenarios of facial recognition, there are ethics and standards that people need to go by, and it needs to be a trusted model. Because in the early days of, computer vision powered by AI makes mistakes and then can create bias. So it's a very deep and very broad topic of ethics.
I have a study, and share that, but it is also talking about the same thing, that generational gap of AI models, like gossip AI. It's called model collapse.
Yeah.
So gradually the context changes, and there was another study I just come up with. I found it yesterday. It's called modified Muller lie. It's a training data. What it says is like two different lengths of arrows. AI interprets it's equal. Illogically, I mean, it's again about interpretation.
So yeah, the AI model will look at the two lines. One, for you and I as humans, we have a perspective, we have maybe some common sense, we have experience, where again, someone can, an AI model mathematically can look at something and go, well, those two lines are the same length, when it's reality. So it's given, a false.
AI, the way we receive response from AI, it typically says, based on information received, it is 99.9% fact. It's true.
Yeah.
But even if it is 2 plus 2.
Yep.
The answer will be 4 based on patterns and predictions and algorithms.
Yeah.
Most likely it is 4. Right. And there is another meme I'm going on. Just recently I saw a person asking AI, is mushroom safe?
Is a mushroom.
Mushroom safe, showing mushroom to the camera.
And on the type of mushroom.
And the next picture is his sitting on a hospital bed. Okay. And AI is asking them so much information about AI, about the mushroom. Like it can hurt you, it can kill you. There are so many germs in it. But again, the answer was mushroom is safe.
Well, I think people need to, in a lot of cases, I say people, we as humans need to realize that data is the most powerful thing and almost like the lifeblood of the world, whether it's verbal information, written information, and how things gets disseminated. But it's also how it gets interpreted by the human. I mean, all too often we remember this quote from probably a few years back that, well, it must be true. It's on the internet. And now we're going to hear, well, it must be true because ChatGPT told me that, or Claude told me that, or, Gemini told me that. It must be true. And I think we as humans, but, our ability to question and to make our own decisions based on the information coming in. Unfortunately today, or fortunately today, there is so much information coming in from so many mediums. And when information is repeated, when they say the wrong piece of information, if different models and different, say, news sources across the globe are picking up on the misinformation and repeating it, and then a consumer is hearing it from multiple sources, logic says, well, I've heard it from 10 sources. I heard it from the BBC News. I heard it from CNN. I heard it from Fox. I heard it from all these media outlets. But if the information into them all was inaccurate, now I'm making a decision, or I'm now receiving that information of truth versus a lie. And I think that the key thing for humans to look at is it truth or myth?
Businesses are relying on it. There is a sense of FOMO with AI to make business decisions,
Yes, fear of missing out.
to operationalize. With this advanced analytics in this case, like how can businesses, leaders, C-suite can make decisions, can rely on it responsibly too, because budgets are tight. There's already billions of dollars being spent on AI evolution. How to make it right in this case?
It's multifaceted. I think there's no one single answer. Say, I've got the latest, CRM system, say from Salesforce. You have to, it comes down to basically trust on multiple levels. Do I trust the vendor? Do I trust the service that they're providing? And trust is earned. You can't just say, we are the most trusted. You have to prove it.
Exactly.
They need to earn that trust. Comes back down to the human factor. Yes, we can automate more because now we have intelligence. You cannot have true automation and improved productivity without some level of intelligence. And I think when it comes down to systems like ERP systems and CRM systems, and as we know in organizations we've all worked for that are in Excel, oh, it must be right because, Dave actually put that model together and it's worked, but there could be something flawed in the formula. Just like there could be something flawed in the algorithms in LLMs or how they've been combined together. So it does come about trust. There's obviously been a lot of noise in the market recently, devaluing software companies. But at the end of the day, it's all about the software and the code and the LLMs. And yes, I can now automate things better as opposed to buying a very canned system coming out. But those vendors are also adapting, providing new levels of service, new levels of insight based on what they know and what they've learned. I'm not just leaving it up to an LLM to pull the data, which could come from a variety of places, some being bad, some being good. I'll just give you one type of thought, which is, as humans, we're natural packrats. We keep copies of data. We're backing it to the cloud. We're backing it, making copies off-prem. Hey, I've got different versions of my documents.
We want
to keep things around. But at some point, you need to purge. Because if that data becomes the source feeding into an AI model, now the AI model's got to pass that information. It's got to realize that this is old. It may be redundant data or obsolete, or trivial, or again, trash. And the liabilities of removing data. I remember working with a company many years ago, and it came down to who will be responsible for deleting the information. Who will take responsibility for deleting it? Was it the storage administrator? Well, no, I'm not going to delete it because the legal officer needs to tell me to take that, or HR needs to tell me to delete it.
Yes.
And then they said, no, don't delete it. So you keep it and you back it up. And now we need more efficiency. We get into technologies like deduplication and encryption and being able to store things up in the cloud. And so we get into this concept of keeping things forever, which starts to become a liability. We move things to the cloud. You moved here a few years ago and in this great house, but you didn't move your garbage with you. You didn't pack up your garbage. You didn't bring that old couch that was, used up and no longer useful. You threw it away.
Yeah.
And what happens is people move things, say, to the cloud or another tier of storage, and they think, I'm more efficient, I got my costs down. But now I've got a monthly garbage bill. What? So if people could use some common sense and treat data and data management, think about it proactively, There was a thing, a term, some people like bring this up and they giggle a little bit because we all lived and breathed it. About 10, 15 years ago, EMC, HPE were locking horns all around information lifecycle management. And I remember giving many presentations to C-levels as well as IT directors and CIOs. And some were like, yeah, I want to buy an ILM. But no, ILM is a strategy. And EMC actually led with tiered storage. But in an ideal world, you should be able to discover and classify your data of its value, do some data hygiene. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I always recommend it's a journey that's a looped journey where you can start anywhere. Most things people start with, protect the data, which means make sure there's another copy. So in the event of a disaster, I can get back up. Yeah. It's the normal aspect of things. Now let me go back and clean some things up so things can be more efficient. My TCO can be more, it being better, my total cost of ownership, my return on investment of this infrastructure, my high-powered GPU-driven, high-performance compute is running better because I've got clean data running through it. All too often, the projects are too long. Which one is urgent? Which one is important? And going back and cleaning the data, getting hygiene data, but truly implementing, data lifecycle management. And people never really get around to. AI is suddenly helping that. There's technologies like ETL, extract, transform, and load, data cleansing initiatives, but they tend to be add-ons from different companies, from different technology gaps. This really needs to be part of the workflow, part of the information flow, just like you would be building a water system for a small town. You would deliver all the dirty water to the house and then clean it at each individual point. You would clean it maybe in a central location. Maybe it's a data lake house. But ideally, it would be a combination. As we know today, certain water systems aren't great. So people put water filtration systems in their house and clean it even further. Think of these kind of concepts when dealing with data in the enterprise, and what arguably I would call the consumer prize. We're consumers of enterprise managed data.
And this is also true in the tech stack. Yep. And so there are a lot of legacy systems keep running on the stack, and teams cannot really decide to retire those or not. And then in the new system, we just transfer this instance as is because nobody knows what's going to break after that.
One of the biggest parts of that is, again, back to humans. I remember working in backup technology quite a few years ago, and people had written custom scripts, automated scripts to do various backups, incrementals forever, and so forth. And the application it was running on, whether it was a network or a net backup or so forth, there was that inherent knowledge of people that had created these. Well, these people are retiring and going away, and no one knows. And so when you look at a backup technology or software data backup, people again keeping multiple copies. And this comes to another dilemma. It's like, well, when do I get rid of those copies? And backup really, or data protection is, in that case, a 48 to 72 hour problem. I'm not going to go back to 2 weeks ago backup sets, whether it be in the cloud or on tape or on disk or whatever location they may be. I'm going to go back to the most recent to restore, and I want it instantaneously. So you can argue that any data protection set or backup set after, say, pick a number, 72 hours, is really about archiving. It's really about a data repository that I query from. And if someone comes to the backup administrator and says, hey, I need, to restore, 3-month-old data, it's usually for data analysis, analytics, compliance, of all these other factors. But we packrat it. But again, backup wasn't designed to be an archive product. I use the analogy as well. What's the most popular database? Excel. People use Excel to manage lists. And what are lists of data ends up becoming really a database. But again, you're using a different tool for a different, what it wasn't designed for. It's just something to think of. Same with so our backup tool wasn't designed for archiving, or even an active archive. It really was designed to make backup copies so I can restore and get back online. That comes down to,
You say 70% of B2B data is dark. You're talking about dark data in the go-to-market terminology. How it impacts the budget?
budgets are an interesting thing. Depends on the budget we're talking about. The IT budget is obviously something that is, constantly there. It's to the backbone of running an enterprise. And then obviously you've got things like the marketing budget that affects things as well. Dark data, easily in common language, is just the data that I don't know about or I don't know its value. So data can be on, this device. It may be synced to the cloud.
What is dark data, by the way? How can you define it?
Dark data is unknown. I don't know its value.
Okay.
I don't know where it is in some cases. Is it the edge? Is it IoT data? Is it dormant? And one argument, again, one thing to think about is if people don't know what they have or where it's located, they may have a vague idea. I've got 500 NAS storage devices out there, but I don't know which of my data's on or what value that data is.
Unknown and configured.
Exactly. So that's where it comes down to, say, dark data. Then the slightly less percentage is your rot data or redundant, obsolete, and trivial data. Again, this is data that could be empty the garbage or empty the bin. I'll say that for my English, folk out there talking about the bin and the rubbish. But take out the garbage because things that get cleaner, they operate more. Otherwise, you're just clogging things up. Things are running slower. Budgets are always going to be either flat to decreasing in some cases, and then other times they're going to get a ramp up with new technologies with AI. As an example, people were talking about, I'm buying a bunch of servers and GPUs. This is great because I've got fear of missing out. But what problem are you solving, or what productivity enhancements are you trying to do? And so, about 6 months ago, I heard about a company who bought a whole bunch of servers from a particular vendor, fully GPU loaded, and say, here's all your AI infrastructure. And they're like, well, where do I start? And the answer was, well, but we don't know. And these are the kind of things, again, what are we really kind of doing with them, with the data, with AI? And like I said, budgets, I look at the IT budget, that's one thing. The marketing budget, especially when it comes down to marketing budgets are an interesting thing. When you look at it, there's the MarTech stack, which is very important. It's the backbone. We need to make that more intelligent, more automated, and clean things. I think some companies I've worked at, it's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. You're never done.
You're never.
You've got to continually clean that data. There's technologies and vendors, people like ZoomInfo, the Tech Target, I think now own. They can help sort of go out, mine data, pull it in, clean it, and then update and synchronize your database. But if they make mistakes and it's not being synchronized correctly, and this becomes a real problem because when we start communicating to users, in some cases, it may not be deduplicated. I may be receiving 4 promotional mails and various digital marketing hitting me. And ultimately, then I can be, blacklisted as a company for, overly marketing to a user that maybe didn't subscribe. Or if I click unsubscribe, is it working? Was I truly unsubscribed? And being able to prove that. And so there are obviously legal things in play to kind of minimize that, but we've constantly got to clean that data. And I think we also need from that data is back to customers. Customers are on a journey. We're customers. We're on a journey of learning, deciding, being influenced. And coming to our own conclusion based on the facts that are meaningful to us. If a particular vendor doesn't take into account the journey that I'm on as an individual and just looks at me as a enterprise customer, or top tier, and doesn't get into the granularity of my persona or how I'm being communicated to, that can backfire.
So that's the ugly part of data when, like, if not managed correctly, diligently, you sort of asset and become liability, and that drains money. And storage is expensive, especially right now when cloud and empty
Yeah.
infrastructure. Although there are processes like you have a frequently used data actively available on one instance, and then there are like other archival levels, vaults, and everything like for less frequently information required kind of stuff, which is cheaper. But again, it is not cheap in total when you get to a year-long budget. What are we losing with this data if we archive it or get rid of it? And nobody knows the answer.
People may know the answer, function within an organization. But again, there's fear. I better keep it just in case. That's the
Just in case.
just in case. So that's the human nature of things. Because in some cases, people would want to be the person who said delete it for fear of losing their job, maybe. But again, people need to realize and do the modeling of keeping the data is hurting us, both in efficiency. It may be a liability in some cases. There are records in certain industries, financial services, healthcare, that where you have to keep certain data for certain periods of years, but then it needs to be proven that it is actually destroyed. Just like I can now go on to any of the social media platforms, request a copy of my data. I guess I always question, well, how about if you do have data protection practices and have got many, many copies of backup, you still have a copy of my data. How can you prove that you remove it from a backup set? If your data protection policy is to keep data for 10 years, how can I go remove specific information about me as an account from a set of data? I can't.
We have original source of information firsthand. We started with that. We trained our AI models with that. Okay. And then after 10 years, then we archive that information. AI is, we continue to learn on most recent information that we feed it. Right. And are not we creating that generational gap within AI, which we came up with the term gossip AI, to train AI to be more gossip friendly than relying on the original information from that root? What do you think about it? I mean, it's interesting, like having like these two both worlds in a perfect balance, in especially when AI is feeding in a lot of information just by perception.
Technologically, I'm thinking many different concepts and answers here. I think I kind of almost look at the security industry, and maybe this is a parallel to the data. Can I be verified? Can I verify that you are who you are? We've now obviously got facial on our phones, thumbprints. We've got various, obviously, passwords that only go so much. But I need to be able to verify, who you are. And is this the same thing? Can I verify this data? How, what is its lineage? And we look at data lineage, and a lot of so-called true data management has been, with, a lot of companies, like Informatica and Snowflake and the analytics and so forth. A lot of it's been around structured data, databases. Where is the growth in data? Unstructured. Files, video, audio, X-ray image, PACS applications, picture archival and medical information. It's all in different formats. You get to the underlying aspects of file, block, and object storage. And then the levels on top of that, now we're talking about vector databases to be able to, search things more efficiently and so forth. There's a lot of convergent pieces of technology. It's almost a wall of little bricks all coming together. They need to work together. And this is some of that challenge. Verification of lineage of data, I think, is probably a key pillar, but not the only pillar. And there are people obviously out there way smarter than I about, data scientists, and the infrastructure side of things. But I think if I look over the past 30, 40 years, we've still had these almost concrete swim lanes of the data management world of software and ECM or content management systems. And we've had that storage infrastructure world. Well, the infrastructure information world doesn't know anything about underlying infrastructure, nor should it. The data infrastructure side, where I'm talking file systems and parallel file systems and block storage and so forth, and doing thin provisioning and encryption, all for a level of security, uptime, and efficiency. The storage infrastructure world is very simply, it's all about maps. It's just a simple acronym: manageability, availability, performance, and scale. Always been the same. But again, manageability, I'm now getting more data, more systems, more complexity. So I'm going to strive for simplicity. Availability, is it backed up? Is it online? Is the RPO or recovery point objective and recovery time objective being met? Can I get that information back real time? That's why some of the large block storage companies are so dominant in financial services. Stock markets can't go down, even for a heartbeat, less than a heartbeat. Got to be kept going on. So that's about the availability, but not only the availability of protection, but the availability to whom, to what, and for how long. And so that comes into a level of security. Performance. I remember someone telling me once when we were passing 2 million IOPS on a system at another company I worked for. I said, 2 million IOPS, that's no one's ever going to need more than that.
Can you explain IOPS?
So input output of data. So again, you look at
The throughput of data processing
exactly, and then you
through the server.
yeah, and then you've got obviously your latency of the system as well. So again, back to performance. Faster and fastest will never be fast enough, because we're always striving to do things quicker. And if we can process information faster than ever before thought possible, and gain all the information from different areas, we can actually solve things quicker. And that's the beauty of AI. But when you start to try and solve these things, there is something to think about at night that keeps me awake sometimes. Say, for example, AI enabled us to solve all fatal diseases. Beautiful. I was able to get service levels that I've never expected before. I never wanted for anything. So life is beautiful. Now people are living longer. People are now have to have, more mental issues because I've got no pain. I've got all these other issues going on. So try typing into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and say, what if I could get all the information as fast as possible at level possible, no latency, no issues, get all of the data. It comes back, well, I can solve, disease, deliver new service levels, do this. Then you ask, well, what are the downsides? Overpopulation, not enough food in the world because people aren't dying as early. And the median age, as we knew back in the 1800s, I think was like 34, not 1800s, maybe the 1500s, like 34 or something. And now it's, I think now 84 in terms of the mean age when someone passes. But again, with every positive, there can be a negative. And I think it's, again, making sure people balance what's going on and making sure that AI and the data that's fueling AI has a level of integrity to create trust. And I think, as given the birth of computing, back in, 1944 with Alan Turing back in Bletchley Park, ironically where I grew up, we have to always plan for bad actors, plan for abuse of information, of systems, so that, back to your original question about ethical AI, how can we ensure that we have peace of mind? And again, we're not having worries and fear and uncertainty and then doubt of the world that we're living in. that we can actually trust again. Because I think a number of years back, there's been episodes, milestones over the past number of decades where people have lost trust.
Yeah.
They've given things up to trust, or they've heard stories or information that they've trusted in, and later on it's come out as lies or negativity or false information.
Trust has been in like center of the AI conversation these days. Our conferences are full of like trust, ethics, and compliance related to AI. I was talking to the CEO on another podcast, and she said like there is no code in the world that can blame AI if anything goes wrong. There is no regulatory. I mean, there are some uh, actions that have been taken in California, Texas, and a few other states between the United States and in Europe also in few countries. There are some AI-related actions taken on a legal front. But again, like the rest of the world is still open, and that's where the loopholes are. That any particular use process data in those regions and then send the results to targeted audience. In terms of determining and conceptually to control all these leakage of data based on patterns and making bad decisions, AI can help too.
Absolutely, because again, patching up leaks in the leaky boat of data inside an enterprise, you can't do that alone. You've got to be able to automate, because the volume, I think IDC put it well, the volume, variety, velocity of data that they talked about with their third platform when big data was the buzzword of the day. We've still got big data. I would argue we've got massive data or tsunami of data. And again, we've got synthetics or synthetic data, where who's the master controller? We know terms of master data management.
Yeah.
Again, very analogous or, again, historically geared towards structured data. The data in the world today is of many varieties. So it's a real struggle for many organizations. So,
Do you want to talk about structured and unstructured data a little bit from AI perspective?
yeah, I think when you look at structured data, typically is your databases. Um, variety of different databases. As we look at, rows and columns in a set format. We've seen obviously SQL, OpenSQL, the various databases over the years, study Oracle, and so on. Good. They power up things like good ERP, CRM systems, records in a lot of cases. Unstructured data in a familiar ways, things that we all deal with. It's a video file. It's it's a Word document. It's a sound file. So there's no specific structure to it. Now there is a definition. I'm not a thesaurus, but there is a definition that comes out. We can probably ad-lib that in. But I think when you look at this data, that comes down to the metadata itself.
Yes.
So your metadata, people say, oh, we do metadata management. Well, if I look at a semi-structured pieces of information or semi-structured data, that could be an email. The email would be the to, the from, the subject, the BCC, CC. That would be sort of the metadata, the data about the data. The payload or blob of that data is the attachment. The attachment could be a video file, a Word document, so forth. So that's an example. Say email is semi-structured. Unstructured would be the attachment. And can be in a variety of forms and different pieces. Now, there may be metadata within that piece of file. There's obviously metadata of a file, obviously when it was written, when it was updated, when was it last accessed. But it's not giving me a lot of information about it. And so if I've got a piece of unstructured data, it's a video, I can extract that video audio. Then I can, turn it into text. Now I can index it. Now I can search it. Do I have to do all those things? Or is there now technology that I can now just immediately interpret a video stream and the text and the audio and the text without having to do all this conversion?
Yeah, in the customer experience space, unstructured data had always been challenging to to understand it correctly and to report it correctly, and even like quantify that information into the reportable metrics. For example, like what is the customer sentiment when the email is written or the feedback is given. So sentimental analysis, emotional connection, engagement, and voice and tone, how the words are picked, how the sentences are structured, and everything. I mean, when AI, and there's been like beautiful tools right now can, with LLM, it is very, very useful right now to interpret all that information in quantified way. So metadata, metadata has been like beautifully structured, that information from the unstructured data.
Yeah, I think a lot of cases it's like this mug of coffee here. You know, if I'm looking at it from the side, I don't know what's inside. It could be tea, could be coffee, could be black coffee or coffee with scotch. I don't know, or scotch. I wouldn't know. So I don't know, do I throw this out or do I consume it? This is kind of, again, what, we've talked about before. For years, we've done blind data management. We've been storing data, keeping it, making sure it's available, making sure that no one can tamper with it, deliver it as fast as we can, and making sure that the systems run. Because the systems may be running, a transactional system for Wall Street. It's all about keeping things running. We're in a different world. We still need to keep things up and running and do all these things and have these levels of efficiencies. But now I want to do more with it. And I also need to understand it. And I think with AI, because now I can do rapid, extreme analytics on that data, I'm now becoming even more reliant on it. And therefore, we get into the argument of storage systems on-premise or off-premise. It's both. It's a hybrid world. It's about data that's transitory. It may be, copied, recopied. I think one of the analysts was talking about, a certain piece of data is copied at least 9 times. I personally think that's, depending on the application, I think that's actually very conservative. It's probably 90 times. You look at social media, how someone's reposting something. Now, it may not be recreating the same information, but it's doing a repost. So I think the level of redundancy or the tsunami of redundant information that is out in the world today is fueling the growth of data centers. It's fueling, obviously, the amount of inputs into environments. And honestly, like anything, we need to have a level of data hygiene going forward. The other interesting thing about, back to dark data, redundant data, is the impact on the environment. So, when you're storing a piece of information, some people have said, well, we've got a sustainability challenge. It's come down from the government, or it's come down from the board of directors. We need to reduce our CO2 outputs. And it's not just the data. It's certainly operationally how you do things, your suppliers, and the closed loop that's actually going on. And some companies have done really well at that. But some companies have said, okay, we're just going to move it up to Amazon or Microsoft Azure or Google. Don't have to worry about our compute and our storage and so forth in terms of power, cooling, and so forth. But it was an interesting stat that came out of the UK, and I'll have to reference it and look it up. But, one of the quotes was that an 11-second video that's uploaded to Instagram is the same as boiling 10 gallons of water in terms of power consumption. They extrapolate that.
It's resource hungry, yeah.
It's resource hungry. And again, if your assets are all up in the cloud, you always have to bring things down. You're not just running things up there and getting the results, you're actually transferring information backwards and forwards. The impact on, compute, power, cooling, storage, spinning up systems, it can be astronomical. And so these are things that people have to take into account. It comes back to what we talked earlier about, which was, maybe the integrity and the ethical elements of AI. There's also the integrity and ethical elements of things like, sustainability, not my problem, and what's the end-to-end. Some companies have done a lot of things where they work with suppliers who are delivering, for example, I don't know, the screws of their machinery, and ensuring that those people are compliant. So their suppliers are also in compliance.
Right.
And that could really have a positive repercussions in terms of sustainability efforts.
That's a good point.
But I think when you look at the data footprint, if you can reduce the data footprint and have that data, and data is always going to continue to grow, but if you can reduce the data footprint in certain locations, it can have a direct correlation on the carbon footprint.
You have had series of senior exec roles, CMO, and working with CEOs and boardrooms. Where do you see the disconnect from top leadership to make these kind of decisions to get rid of dark data?
There's always, it does come back to one of the things we talked earlier, which is budget. What's it going to cost me? What's my ROI? And what's the cost of not doing anything?
Who should be responsible to give answers to these questions?
Over the past 10 years, there's been a huge growth in the title of Chief Data Officer. And the Chief Data Officer certainly generally initially has got focused on the ERP, the CRM, those kinds of things, of the backbone of data that's helping the company operate. And when it comes down to things like data lifecycle management, and then compliance. So the compliance aspect is, it's a multi-headed monster, and I think it's good when we look back at things. Probably it was probably about 15 or 20 years ago when we got into the communication or broker-dealer communications over email, where you had to prove what was said and that the communication was not tampered with. So there were regulations like NASD 3010, SEC 17-84, and others. Again, all about the tamperability and the proof that data is of value. So compliance is, a true aspect of that. And that's where the legal officer gets involved. But also often I've noticed with some organizations where, say, a chief legal officer then says to IT, we need to prove that the data's not been tampered with, go figure it out. And IT are not legal people, so then you have to start working with middleware vendors and people who specialize in things where you can have email communications where you've got legal hold on information. I think some of these practices in many companies is still inconsistent. In some cases, either too rigid or too loose. And it's, in this case, it's a combination when it comes down to compliance. It's chief data officer, CIO or CISO, and the chief legal officer. But ultimately, the CEO has accountability to ensure that, they're compliant, their data is good. And the quicker that a lot of the C-levels and organizations understand that the backbone of their company is their data, is their competitive advantage. People will actually look at their data as their most valuable asset in the company versus their product will win. People who put their data to work for them and have clean data, fast data, they will win because they have their data act together.
I have been a victim of keeping servers, keeping data because decisions are delayed.
It wasn't a cost factor for you. It was a time factor, probably.
Cost too.
Yeah. I think when I worked for a company where we did a lot of discovery and classification of content, primarily on unstructured data. And we worked on messaging that would ideally scale and what's our target audience. And the target audience, really, we were like C-levels down to, even IT implementer. So there were different messages and different value propositions at 3 different levels. But the interesting thing, and I think if you even look now, what are the top CIO or CISO priorities? In most reports, it still comes out as number 1 is cyber or cyber resiliency and security.
Yeah.
It's the first order of business. Protect yourself, protect your assets, protect your data. Secondly, now, as we know, is all about AI. Is the next priority. the key messages that we worked with, which was, it was really about risk avoidance, risk mitigation. Secondly, then there was cost. I don't usually like saying cost. Economics sounds better. But it really is about the economics and the tentacles of the economics. And one large bank that I worked with a number of years back, the IT departments weren't talking to each other. There was a whole group running old Microsoft Exchange and another group running storage. The Exchange guys didn't really, care about how much data was being stored, and they the servers. Storage guys were all about, hey, too much data here, but didn't really care about the application. Different budgets and different courses. And the solution we came with needed to bring both of those people together. The last thing was really about value. And I think now, so it's about risk, cost, and then what's the value that I'm going to get out of the data. Again, maybe when I look at things like value, risk, and cost, it comes back down to my marketing aspirin, i.e. a solution to my pain, or am I selling vitamins, which is, it's nice to have, but now I think people are realizing I must have it. I must have value from my information in order to survive, to have competitive differentiation, because my competitor really is doing a lot of analytics on their customer data, better targeting, better adjustment in their core products or product portfolio based on customer input, versus inside out of engineers or developers building something and going out and saying, would you like to buy one?
Yeah, that's interesting. The analogy you mentioned about like two different teams of on managing Microsoft Exchange and the IT infrastructure. So yeah, so these created silos, I think, is another layer on the problem to create more confusions and delays in those decisions when it comes to manage data correctly. Yeah, that I see is a common problem across the board. There's so many teams managing different processes and they're not talking to each other. Is this fixable?
I think anything's fixable at the end of the day, but we also have to look at process. I think there's people who talk about product, process, and people. Great way of looking at things. Process, when process is not hard to understand, where the handoff points and the collaboration points are there, certainly helps. But with, again, deployment of AI, just say for productivity or AI for, analysis, there needs to be a certain level of process in place and people can believe. All too often, many times, I've stood up and I've been in presence of people presenting to a board or an executive team, and people, maybe not question the proposal. They question the proposal, but they may not question, say, the ultimate output or what the proposal is. They're actually questioning the data. And then you say, well, no, this data came from Salesforce and this data came from finance. And then someone just says, well, I don't believe it. Mm-hmm. And so if you can ensure that people, it's very transparent in terms of process of the data source, the output, then you can get into subjective analysis and discussion. But when someone shuts down a report or a finding or a proposal because they just say, oh, I don't believe the data, it slows things down. So I think process and transparency will help fix some of this. But again, can it be agile? Can it be simple? All too often, we as humans make things complex. Yeah. And what's the old fortune cookie? It's a simple task to make things complex, but it's a complex task to make things simple. An old fortune. I think I got that fortune cookie once, but I'm sure many got that one because they're made out of San Francisco. But yeah, it's I think anything's fixable.
This leadership challenge is interesting because when people go uncomfortable, they leave. And when they leave, the knowledge drains too. And that's another problem when the knowledge is gone, and like who will answer those questions, and that person me. So again, it's like a ripple effect.
I can't remember who said this. It was a poetic statement, and the lady's name will come to me, but it was the old saying that when you learn, teach.
We don't do that. I mean,
We don't do that as a common practice in many corporations because there is that level of security or insecurity. There's no time to share, or I didn't think that information that I knew was valuable. And the longer you're at something, the more you know, you're almost questioning, well, why aren't people getting this? Well, maybe you didn't share the information. So again, people lifecycle management, knowledge lifecycle management inside a corporation, even process lifecycle management. Processes need to evolve.
we stay focused on just delivering, just working, keep working, and there's always more work to do. We never document anything. That's the challenge.
Comes back to, in my opinion, to looking at the big picture, looking at what's going on. You know, when you go into a new company, first thing you want to learn quick, how is the company processes working? How do people communicate? But look at the big picture. Ask the so-called dumb questions. If you go into an organization, for example, marketing organization, and ask something as practical as cost per lead, some people may know, some people may not. If someone says, well, the cost per lead is $200 in B2B enterprise, typically, and we're at 150, that's great. But that you say those words to maybe a salesperson that's not educated on the marketing capabilities or what's required to generate leads. They go, wow, that's huge. That's so expensive. You know, I can get a lead based on this, but they're not understanding the scoring methodology behind that lead, the qualification against that. You know, it was a lead. They touched us. They read a book. They read up a white paper. They watched a webinar. They're really interested. Or we talked to them. They've got budget, authority, need, and time, and or band. This is a quality lead, but all of that takes effort. And all of that can be accounted for in terms of lead. If you connect too many dots to that cost per lead, then you're probably you may be inflating, or people will say, well, your cost per lead is too high. Because the last company I looked at as a CFO, our cost per lead was X. And it's like, well, it's different. How mature were they in their processes? So these are some of the kind of facts or realities. Because again, back in marketing based on data, you're always trying to justify, ROI and impact. And you need to be able to justify certain things. What's the first thing that gets cut in the budget when people are looking budgets? Marketing. Because it's a thing that always gets cut down. But there is, I've always argued on budgets, there's a hard deck. Just like in Top Gun, go below the hard deck, you're going to hit a wall or the ground. You turn off marketing. I know we're going off track here, but you take the budget down a particular level, and then the money in becomes wasted money because it's not at the frequency, reach, or volume that should be. Oh, we're going to take everything down. We're going to do social media. How are you going to process it? How are you going to validate it? Yeah, and people, again, marketing is a science. In some cases, the science of customers and the science of operating. It's not like some of the others. Everyone to stick up an ad and people are going to show, or it's going to be a transactional thing online. We're going to be able to do that. B2B enterprise is very different. When you develop a vision statement for the company, in some cases, people do it because it's the thing to be done. But a vision should inspire people to ultimately get up every morning of this is why I'm here, this is why I'm doing things. All too often, people overly wordsmith things. It becomes very generic. But if you can have a vision that truly inspires, then that's great. Perfect. People can focus or use that as a guideline. But a vision without a strategy, how you're going to implement that vision over time is just a dream.
Yeah.
And then a strategy is certainly, or strategies are how you achieve that vision. what are the objectives associated with each of those strategies?
We talked about the discrepancy with data, dark data, unstructured data, unknown data. What is the starting point to address that? Like you gave an analogy earlier on that like when we move houses, like we don't take garbage and we leave it behind. But and how to flag what is garbage, because it is different for everybody. What is your take? If you would have to move, what will you consider as a garbage and what is the most important data?
I think the success of a particular project, let's just get people on the same page of what the problem is. It's going to cost budget. It will include people, and there will be a process, a beginning, a middle, and an end in terms of how we do things. The first step would be to get people to agree that there is a problem,
Yes.
and an opportunity.
Acknowledgement.
So everyone needs to acknowledge and to buy in, and that this is a journey. It's not a one and done project. There's a journey to clean things up and to implement new process and implement new guidelines of how to do things. Most projects will get a level of focus and investment because there's an immediate problem, compliance need, a sustainability requirement, or cost of doing backup operations is too high. Our productivity software is too slow. So what is the problem? Because people, budgets, people and process will be assigned to the problem points quicker than they will trying to clean things up. But doing that in the context of the overall big picture of fixing data chaos and put your data to work efficiently so it can be trusted should be broken down as those areas. Second guideline would be keep the team small. Keep the team with an executive sponsorship or executive responsibility. So you're not going to get internal inertia or, but I'm too busy. That's not my responsibility. I've got other more important things to do. So again, making sure that the team is small. Do not over-engineer this. People will over-engineer things. People will give many different combinations and permutations of, well, we need to consider this and consider this. And they would give responses of, we need to do this before that, and so on.
Yeah.
Keep it small.
Yeah.
So I think then identifying another area to look at, maybe step 3 is pick an application. Maybe it's your sales automation. Maybe it's your CRM system of manufacturing and, whether it be your ERP system for controlling production, or, maybe it's the financial reporting problem. Because the numbers always seem to be off. Or maybe it's, the marketing automation. We're getting, poor responses because our communication going out is with poor database issues. But again, identifying the problem area, it could be by a function that's made up of many applications, or it could be simply one application. So start small, but make sure that it's that one element that's in the whole big picture of what you're trying to fix. So maybe I'm fixing my, marketing operations to be more efficient, but the next step is I know that's going to directly connect into my CRM system that also needs to be fixed. Again, because most marketing automation is tied into your customer relationship management software, and you need to make sure that they're working. All too often, I've seen data being shared between a marketing automation system or MIT and, say, Salesforce, and there's been inconsistencies, multiple levels, and then you've created this storm. So I think, again, just reiterating, don't try and fix all the data, fix the pools of data, and how they interconnect to other systems. And then whether you want to spin up different groups to focus on each area, but they need to all talk together. Biggest thing that I would take away, though, is don't over-engineer this. Don't think of it as a one-and-done project. It's a multi-year approach. because it's going to take a number of months and in some cases years to get people to behave differently.
I like your approach to keep the core team small so it can move fast. Decisions can be done faster. There is always I make joke about it. Like there are always two type of people in the room. One who find problem in every solution and the solution in every problem, right? So try to find more people who have to be finding solution in every problem kind of a mindset. And yeah, I mean we all know that who are those people we work with typically. And one other thing which I also feel like, and I have tested that since I mentioned like the similar problem is the tech stack also. Sometimes we know servers are running and nobody knows what can go wrong if we cut it off, right? And we have tested waters in experimentation kind of approach. Uh, Shut down those.
Turn them off for 2 screens.
Yeah, people who get suffered will scream, right? And nobody scream.
Yeah.
And we have seen like for 3 months, nobody cried. That's another way to check like if that data is really necessary, server is really necessary, and just like cut the wires, spur a little bit on it, and it's still there. If you want, take it back. But if you don't, nobody it is gonna complain.
I think when some of these projects, again, people will say, oh, it's an IT issue. IT is the systems that we're running. And I would argue that's some part of the issue or part of the opportunity. It really is about, it's everyone's responsibility. If I'm entering data into email, if a salesperson is updating information into, at salesforce.com, it's their job to make sure that the data they're entering in goes in. I've seen this time and time again. I think many other leaders of sales would agree with me on this, which is getting salespeople to ensure that their account information is up to date, that their forecast is accurate. I was with one company a number of years back, and a great guy, Frank Slutman, came in and was basically saying, if your information in Salesforce is not up to date, you're not getting paid. And it was amazing the quality.
That's a smart move.
Of that data. And some people say you can't be so draconian about that.
But people don't do that otherwise.
They don't. There needs to be a level of accountability of data. And as if people didn't realize, by me typing in the right number, the right address, the right phone number, etc., that has an impact, a sprawling effect.
Yeah.
Because marketing is going to use it, or customer service support are going to use it, finance, but billing are going to be using it. It's everyone's responsibility. The one thing I would say about small teams as well, make sure they're dedicated. All too often we say we're going to go fix X or we're going to go work on Y. And it's in addition to what they're already doing. Yeah. And therefore they're only partially vested in doing things, but just they've got their day job.
It should be the top priority for the core team.
Yeah.
Should be the core.
There should be a core, let's call it SWAT team or dedicated team for a period of months.
It will so leave it to get it done. Yeah.
They get up every morning and all they do is they think about this issue. They also need to have an executive voice to report out, or rather, here's what we need in order to do our job. I've seen time and time again where, we're going to work on this. Then there's multiple initiatives. That same person is involved in now 3 initiatives, in addition to what their regular position and responsibilities are. And that's an investment. That's an investment that, the company needs to make. Are we going to do this? And are we going to do it right? And when we uncover things, we need to be able to make the tough choices of what to cut loose in terms of systems, process, and fortunately even people. And are we going to be investing the right level of investment in order to address this? Because it's extremely important. Don't think of this as a du jour thing. Oh, we're going to do this, and then we're bored with it, we're on to the next. It's the same thing with companies changing their vision or their strategy, once a quarter or every year. By the time it takes hold, that's the time to reinvigorate it. It's, people think of things as one and done. It's a journey. and there are multiple aspects, and there's multiple dependencies. And think of cause and effect. If I'm going to change something within, say, marketing automation, how's that going to affect my CRM system, and vice versa? If I'm improving productivity across my company, I've seen it where companies have rolled out, for example, Microsoft Teams, and only a certain amount of people get Copilot. Well, the beauty of Copilot to take notes for you, to keep the results, is beautiful. But it's only as great as everyone is sharing in that. Everybody is doing that. And then the actions have a follow-up to. And again, this comes back to the human factor of discipline.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gary. Thank you. And that's a wrap on this episode. As I look back over our journey so far, I'm struck by something far more significant than our metrics. I'm struck by the caliber of the conversations we have built together. To you, our viewers, thank you. Your time is the most valuable asset you own, and the fact that you choose to spend it here. I do not take it lightly, and I do everything possible in my control to create the value content for you. At this show, we are not interested in winning the race for volume. We are committed to quality over quantity. Our goal is not to fill your feed, but to fuel your perspective. We are building a platform focused on big picture insights that actually move the needle in your life and your career. We are still in our early chapters, and I'm grateful to have you with us as we build something designed to last. Thank you for your trust and your continued support. If you value this perspective and our agenda, I invite you to subscribe and join us in building this mission. Thank you.